Good evening, everyone. Hello. Hello. Can you guys hear me? Okay, the better question is, can you see me? Okay, I'm looking for appropriate answers. All right. On behalf of Grand Rapids Community College and our provost, Ms. Hilda Healy, if you could wave for them, and our Dean of Workforce Development, Ms. Fiona Hurt, Ms. Luann Wedge, I'm not sure if she's here, but she's the Associate Director of Student Employment at Grand Rapids Community College. Ms. Lena Newton, Special Emphasis Program Manager of the United States Attorney's Office, and all of the faculty and staff of the Criminal Justice Department. Folks, if you're here, wave your hands. I know Ms. Edwards is in the back. Can you, if you're faculty, staff, instructors, wave your hands to the folks. And of course, and again, all of the faculty and staff of the Criminal Justice Department, we welcome you tonight as we kick off all of the programming that we've put together for you guys. As current students, I believe, have some future students in here, and also folks from our overall community to kick off National Criminal Justice Month. I should tell you that although March is National Criminal Justice Month, we are taking the programming on into May. You know, once we get started, we don't know how to turn it off, right? But that's why you all love us. As you walk around campus and go on the college's website, you should begin to notice posters and announcements of events such as the Federal Career Internship Opportunity Day that's going to be held next week in this very room. So if there are those of you all that are interested in federal careers and also internship opportunities, we invite you guys to come down between the hours of 10 a.m. To 1 p.m. and also 5:30 p.m. to 7:30 p.m. Spread the word amongst your friends that may not be here tonight. And don't worry about the dates because, like I said, you're going to see posters. You should already have begun to see posters and announcements flashing across screens and being hung up. And on March 21, we will be holding a victim impact panel in this very room as well from 10 a.m. until 12 noon. On April 18th, we're going to host a state and local level career day / internship day. So anything that's done at the local level, from faith-based initiatives all the way to the sheriff's department, those folks will be here as resources for you guys as well. At this point, we're scheduled to conclude with an opportunity that has never been granted to students in its 32 years of meeting. And it's been specifically designed for you all. And that is the American Jail Association's National Conference. They're offering a free student day for you guys. So anyone and everyone that wants to attend this national conference that's going to be held down at DeVos Place, on behalf of Sheriff Stelma, our very own Sheriff Stelma, helped to design this. I'm not sure if any of you guys have ever seen a national conference of any sort take place, but you're talking about thousands of folks in the field coming together and talking about best practices. So all those things that we go over in class, these are actually the movers and the shakers in the field, and they're going to be here. And there's been a day designated specifically for you guys. We're also going to be reaching out to our high school friends as well and inviting them. So if you're not in Ms. Edwards' class or an academy recruit or in Ms. Talbert's class, all you have to do is contact the Criminal Justice Department and we will get you signed up for that. Again, it's free. We know how much you all appreciate those letters, F-R-E-E. You guys with me on that? All right, and that's gonna be held on May 7th. So guess what, that's that week that now falls in between the winter semester and the summer semester. How perfect is that? Give me feedback, people. All right, all right. So over the coming weeks, your instructors are going to begin to announce these things in class, so take advantage of them. Take advantage. This is where we see the field come to life. Tonight, you guys are going to see the field, our field, at the federal level come to life. So we do all of this instructing to you all in class, but then we need for the rubber to hit the road, so to speak. All right? So again, if you need further information on that, please don't hesitate to get a hold of us. Now, With no further ado, I'd like to introduce to you all our keynote speaker tonight that has taken time out of his very busy schedule to come and give you guys some information, speak to you all, and to also, I believe, take some questions and answers if we have time. He's Mr. Patrick Miles. He is the United States Attorney for the Western District of Michigan. And I'm going to take my time with this because I believe that when people work hard, we need to acknowledge that. And sometimes we just kind of blow through information. So I want you guys to have a really good handle on who you have in front of you and the time and effort that was put into trying to ensure that we could get someone at this level for you guys. Mr. Miles was confirmed by the United States Senate on June 29th of 2012 and assumed office on July 9th of 2012. Mr. Miles is a Grand Rapids native and attended Grand Rapids Public Schools. He holds a Bachelor's of Science degree in Business Administration with an economics major from Aquinas College. We forgive him for not attending Grand Rapids Community College, but he's here tonight, people. Mr. Miles is a 1991 Harvard Law School graduate. He was editor-in-chief of the Harvard Law Record. Following law school, Mr. Miles joined Varnum LLP, a 150-attorney law firm based in Grand Rapids, Michigan. In 1997, at the age of 29, Mr. Miles became the first African-American partner in Varnum's 110-year history. In 2006, Mr. Miles became a member of Dickinson Wright PLLC, a law firm with 260 attorneys and offices in Ann Arbor, Bloomfield Hills, Detroit, Grand Rapids, Lansing, Nashville, Phoenix, Washington, D.C., and Toronto. Mr. Miles was elected to serve as president of the Grand Rapids Bar Association from 2004 to 2005, and as a trustee from 1999 to 2002. He has also served over 24 charitable and professional over 24 charitable and professional boards and committees. So as you guys begin to see us infuse service learning into your classes, understand that it doesn't stop here. It continues on into your career. Listed as one of Michigan's super lawyers since 2006, Mr. Miles is a highly regarded attorney and board member. He holds the highest rating AV from Martindale-Hubbell peer review, which rates attorney reputation, ethics, legal liability, and knowledge. I'll let that soak in. Reputation, ethics, legal liability, legal ability, and knowledge. Mr. Miles received the 1996 State Bar of Michigan Outstanding Young Lawyer Award, the 2005 Outstanding Young Michigander Award from the Michigan Jaycees, and a number of awards and honors from several other organizations such as the Grand Rapids Chamber of Commerce, West Michigan United Way, NAACP, Grand Rapids Jaycees, and Grand Rapids Business Journal. Mr. Miles is a frequent author and speaker to professional audiences on legal issues, professionalism, diversity, and inclusion, as well as to youth audiences on leadership and service. With no further ado, you guys join me in welcoming Mr. Patrick Miles, U.S. Attorney for the Western District.
Thank you for that introduction. Appreciate it. It's good to be here tonight. See, we've got some we've got some officers here. Are you campus safety or what? Police Academy recruits. Fantastic. All right. Well, good. Well, I'm going to talk tonight about really almost three different topics, which I think were in my mandate coming here. The first is they wanted me to talk about myself, and I can talk about myself pretty well. We might get out of here sometime by the weekend, but also I'll talk a little about my journey, my educational journey, and my career path, and try and give some advice and counsel based on my experience that might be of help to some of you. Are there any high school students here? I know that they talked about, okay, there are some, okay. We've got some high school students, so I want to just make sure, because I'll kind of go back to that as well. Second, I'm going to talk a little bit about the criminal justice month topic and some issues that are of particular importance to me as the United States Attorney. I'll talk about my job as United States Attorney, what we do, and we can always go into more detail in the question and answer session on that as well. And then finally, I'll talk a little bit about the potentials in having a federal career, and not just in law enforcement, federal law enforcement, but just generally, and some of the opportunities for interns, internships for students, so that they can look at possibly getting an entry into federal career. So first, as Ms. Bates mentioned, I am a Grand Rapids native, third generation. I've always loved Grand Rapids. I love this community, the way people give back, and we just have a great community spirit here, and I've loved to see the growth. And I went to Ottawa Hills High School, and when I was in high school, you know, at the time you're in high school, things there seem like they're the most important in the world. I was a baseball player. That was the most important thing, you know, to me. You know, I'm thinking having your peers think you're cool, it seems important. But every adult will tell you, and I'm included in that, high school is almost irrelevant in terms of those things that you think are so important as you get older. They really don't matter. And when you spend your 4 years in high school or whatever, you really realize that 4 years is just a blip when you've got a lot of life left. When you go to your 10 or 15 or 20 or 25-year reunion, and you see how some people don't evolve past high school, but the people who do, and how happy they are in their lives when they've really gotten beyond the high school mentality. So you really need to focus on you, and not what your friends think when you're in high school. You really do need to go forward. When I was in high school, actually, I was fortunate. I had enough credits. I had the option for my senior year of either spending part-time down here at community college. It was then called JC, junior college, or actually going to college full-time by taking a couple classes in the summer. So I did. So I graduated from high school at 16 and went off to college full-time as a freshman that fall, and got that experience going. And I have no regrets for that at all. It was just such a great experience to be in the college environment. And I was really in a hurry, in a way, I wanted to get my life and my career started. But one thing I did in high school, my junior year, was I took an honest self-assessment of what I like to do and what I'm good at. Yeah, because that's when I started thinking about my career. And I just thought, you know, I really enjoy reading, I enjoy writing, I enjoy speaking, I enjoy interacting with people, I like solving problems and researching things, and that right away said law. So that's really how I came on a law career, by looking at those things that I really liked doing and was good at. And then I also I liked business things too, so that's when I kind of combined it with a business law was my initial focus up until recently. And so that was very helpful because then when I was in college, I was able to really focus my education on becoming a business lawyer. That's why, as you heard, I went to a small college. I went to Aquinas College. I was brought up to be a Spartan. My mom had gone to Michigan State. My older sister had gone to Michigan State. My whole life, I was planning on going to Michigan State. And a lawyer I knew said, you know what, if you want to be a lawyer, don't go to Michigan State. Now, that was not a jibe at Michigan State. He said, it's too big. Don't go to a big school. He said, go to a small liberal arts school, get to know your professors, get involved in extracurriculars, demonstrate leadership, get good letters of recommendation from your professors. That's what law schools are looking for. They're looking for well-rounded people. And that actually is good advice, not just for law school, but also for graduate school. And he said, it's so hard to do that at a big school like Michigan State. It's not impossible, but it's a lot easier to do that at a small college. So that's how I ended up at Aquinas College. And that really hit me because when I was actually a little farther along in college, around my junior year, I was studying for the law school admissions test, the LSAT. And there was a brochure from Stanford University Law School. Stanford University Law School is probably one of the top 5 in the country. And there was a matrix. And at the top of that matrix, it had people's grade point average. And it said, 3.7, 3.5, 3.0 on down. And on the other axis, it had LSAT score. So on the top, it had basically the top 5 percentile and then on down. And it showed the number of admissions and acceptances. And in that very top box, which were basically the perfect scores, the 3.75 and above GPA and the top 5% LSAT score. So these are basically perfect numbers, grades and test score. Half of the people who applied were accepted, which means half were rejected. So I'm thinking, oh my goodness, you can have perfect numbers or nearly perfect numbers. You can be at the very top, and your odds are 50-50 to get into a top law school. I thought, oh my gosh. But then after a moment of severe panic and all that, and thinking I'm never going to law school, no, wait a minute. Those folks that probably got rejected did nothing else. All they did were study for the LSAT, but they did nothing else. Those are the people that only had a 50-50 chance because they did nothing to round out their academic career. They didn't do anything else in terms of extracurriculars. They didn't show that leadership. They weren't active in student government or in charity and all sorts of other activities. They were just grinds. And that wasn't enough to get into a good law school. Law schools wanted people who were well-rounded, and that's what they also, because as a lawyer, you've got to balance a lot of things day to day. You can't just be in the books. You've also got to be out in the world. So that was really going back to that advice I got from that lawyer about going to a small school worked out. But again, you can get the same experience going to a big university. A lot of my classmates at Harvard were from, in fact, most of them were from big universities, but all of them, almost to a person, had done something outstanding. There was no sense bragging at law school to your classmates about how great you were, because when you did that, you'd hear something back that was even more outstanding than you had ever done. I mean, the president of the student body at UCLA, or a Rhodes Scholar or whatever. I mean, these were just very accomplished, well-rounded people. One thing you also can do while you're in high school and when you're in college is you really have to start thinking about the choices that you are making, because they will start to affect your life course. Now, you might have a direction that you think your life is going to go and that you want your life to go. And so then if that's where you are, then you've got to make choices that will keep you on that path. Now, things will happen. Life happens. And so sometimes changes will happen. Like, again, I was looking at Michigan State and went this way to Aquinas, and then, I never would have expected or planned to go to Harvard Law School and so on. Life can take you in a lot of different directions. But you have to be prepared for those opportunities that come along. And you have to be open to those changes, especially the positive ones. And most importantly, you cannot let fear stand in your way. If you let fear is a paralyzer, and it will hold you back if you are afraid, if you have self-doubt and insecurity and inferiority. You are just never going to achieve your potential if you let that happen. And it's so sad when that happens. And I look at all the opportunities in my life that if I had been afraid of doing it, I would not have enjoyed so many other things. So you really can't let fear stand in your way. as I said, when I was in college, as an undergrad, I was able to focus on preparing for law school, and I was very fortunate that I knew exactly what I wanted to do very early, because I had friends who could do a lot of different things well. They had a lot of different interests. They might be good writers, and they might have been really interested in international things. So they had a real tough time sometimes focusing and settling on one particular major or one particular discipline. So that is a challenge when you can do a lot of things well and you've got a lot of interests, to try and figure out what it is specifically that you're going to do. So, with that, I don't have any great insights other than to say, try and decide on what you feel in your heart you're most passionate about, because life is too short to do something that you don't like and that you don't love, in fact, and you really need to be passionate about whatever it is that you're going to be doing with your career and your time. What I would also say to you, when you're in, especially when you're in college, and whether or not you realize it, you're starting, to create your network that might be, and you're also starting to create your reputation. And these things will be with you, for the rest of your life, really, and career. So you're starting to look at the people around you. That's your network. It's the beginnings of your network, and it's the beginning of your reputation. If you've got the reputation that you can, drank the most out of the keg, people are going to remember that. If you've got the reputation that you're a nice person and that you treat other people with respect, they'll remember that too. So just keep that in mind. People are watching you. You may not realize it, but they are. And you are sending out signals about yourself that are going to hold in people's minds for a long time. And what you're also starting to do with some of the choices you're making, you're either limiting or you're expanding your opportunities and your options in your career. When the better you do as an undergrad in terms of your GPA and your scores if you want to look at grad school, that's going to create more options. I had a lot of options in terms of law schools that I had applied to. I could have gone to Stanford Law School. I got in. I could have gone out to Northern California. Could have gone to upstate New York at Cornell. Could have gone to University of Michigan Law School. So I had a lot of options. But one reason I actually went to Harvard is not just because it was the best, and it's always the best, despite what rankings may say, Yale and all that other nonsense. But I've always in the back of my mind, I wasn't sure about it, but I always in the back of my mind, I always said, I think I'm going to come back to Grand Rapids to practice law and to work and to live. In Grand Rapids, there's a ton of U of M lawyers, people who've gone to U of M Law School. And if I want to distinguish myself, there aren't a lot of Harvard lawyers. And so that was one reason, even though U of M was 1/3 the tuition, that I went to Harvard. So that I had those options because I'd done the right things as an undergrad. When you choose a graduate school and you choose a law school, you're kind of starting to think about where you're going to live long term. Because some people will go to southern law schools because they want to live in the South. So they'll think about Vanderbilt or Duke University or someplace else, because they may think, well, I might want to live in the South, or I might want to live out in California, so I might look at USC or UCLA or Stanford or Berkeley, what have you. So you're starting to think about where you're going to be long term when you're at the end of your college career and the beginning of your grad school career. You're also starting to narrow your focus in terms of what you're looking at doing with your career. People in law school come from all disciplines. We had music majors, history majors, math majors, engineers, business majors, whatever. But we're all, we actually were kind of filtering down into these big corporate law firm jobs for most people. So you are starting to focus when you're in law school. You're also, or graduate school too, you're also broadening your network even farther. And you're still establishing that reputation. And I'll get back to that in a moment. We had some pretty spectacular people in my law school class, as I mentioned. One guy ended up being he was really interested in politics, and he ended up being a campaign manager for President George W. Bush when he was running in 2000. He ended up working in the White House as political director. He ended up being the chairman of the Republican National Committee. Now, any of those is a dream job for a political junkie. And he had all those 3 jobs before the age of 40. And we had another guy who became an actor. If you watch CSI New York, Hill Harper, used to play basketball on the BALSA, the Black Law Students Association team with Hill. He was also the quarterback of the team. We have a guy who's a talent agent, a big one, out in LA. We've got just a ton. We've got the chairman of the FCC. We've got another guy you might have heard of, Barack Obama. That's right, the president of the United States was our classmate. And so, you know, who would have known? Who would have thunk, you know, that the guy that you'd see around campus and you're shooting, you know, hoops with in the gym goes on to become the president of the United States. So you just never know. Yeah, you can applaud Barack Obama, sure, president. And he is a good guy. He is what you see. He is down to earth, and he was really, really cool and confident then, and we knew he was headed for great things. After law school, you know, you start to or college, what have you, you start to apply for that first job, and I know how tough that is, you know, because your resume is thin, you don't have that experience. I'll tell you a little story. When I was in college, and before starting law school, so during college, during my summers, I had worked as a spot welder in a factory at Steelcase for 4 summers. Hated every minute of it. Oh my goodness, it was hard work. I was up every morning. We'd either go in at 6:30 in the morning or 5:30 in the morning. And I was fortunate, I was on days. And then work until 4. And the first day I remember, I'd never, you know, standing in steel-toed boots, you don't know how tired you are when you've been on your feet all day long, you know, standing in one spot, you know, doing metal. Dirty, sweaty, hot, hard, heavy lifting work. I mean, back-breaking work. And I never missed, you know, a second of work. I was always there for 4 summers, even though I didn't like it. But it was really hard work, but good work, and you made good money. But once I graduated from college, that summer before starting law school, you know, I said, gee, you know, I'm gonna not go back to that darn factory for this summer. I'm gonna try and get a white collar job. I'm gonna try and actually be clean when I come home from work and not have oil and dirt on my hands and be all sweaty and smelly. I want to wear a suit or something and be dressed. And so I went around and applied for some jobs. No one would hire me. I'm like, what's going on? I'm a graduate, you know, I've got all these accomplishments. I'm about to go to Harvard Law School. My resume is outstanding. I can't get a white collar office job. Well, the people they were saying, well, we want to have somebody who's going to be with us long term, or, you know, the law firms all said, well, we want to hire you as a summer associate when you're in law school, because then we will wine and dine you, but, you know, you're not in that program yet. So I never forgot that about some of those law firms that did that. But, you know, it was really, you know, that was really frustrating. So yeah, I was back in the factory that summer before law school, working away in the factory. But, you know, it is so hard. But, you know, getting an internship or a paid internship, and I'll talk about some of those opportunities later, that's a great way to get both experience and to get your foot in the door for that first job. That is really a good thing. And I would have loved to have looked at some of these especially paid internships. In your career, when you do get that first job, you know, it's really important, and it's a cliche, but to have a really good mentor is really important. And sometimes your company or firm or job, they'll assign a mentor. That may or may not end up being the person who's your mentor, but the real mentor is a person that takes a true interest in you, in seeing you develop, who really wants to share their expertise with you. And as a mentee or just as an employee anyway, it's really advisable to watch what other people do, to listen to what they're telling and ask questions and listen to what they're saying, and to learn as much as you can. So watch, learn, and listen. And that will really help you, because that you'll learn how to model your behavior, to learn the social mores of that organization as well. You also are now especially establishing your professional reputation. Your professional reputation. How you carry yourself, how you treat your fellow employees, your supervisors, as well as your subordinates. That is really important, especially in a town the size of Grand Rapids. We're kind of a mid-sized town. In the legal community, you can establish a good reputation pretty quickly. You can also establish a bad reputation even faster. If you're rude and condescending to support people, that'll get around, and you're not going to get the kind of support that you need. If you're untrustworthy, if your word is not true, if you're a backstabbing, conniving person, that people figure that out, and that'll haunt you, and that'll hamper you. So you're establishing your professional reputation, and you want to be known for hard work. You want to be known for your creativity and intellect and your dedication to the job. Those are positive attributes that you really want to do and show. So if that's who you are, then show it and do it. And so the other thing is, now is really when you really need to work on your network and networking, because now you not only need the one that you've established, because it will come in handy. You know, so many lawyers that I know got a phone call out of the blue from an old college friend or person and sent them a big case or something, you know, so those things can happen. You know, you meet these folks and they live in other states or something, and all of a sudden they say, you know, I need help, and I knew you were in this area, and so can you help me out? Well, they wouldn't call you if they didn't think highly of you. So that network that you've already established can come back in to help you, but you also need to keep building that network and making it more diverse when you're in your career. As was mentioned, I did a lot of community service. That wasn't entirely to help my legal career. It was also just something I just did. I just knew, because my parents were both very, very involved in the community, and it was kind of second nature, that you didn't just work a job, you worked to build your community, and you volunteered your time. And so there are ancillary benefits, because you do build your reputation if you're a good community volunteer. If you're not just there if you're there for the wrong reasons, that will be known. If you're just there to take up a seat and build your resume, people figure that out. But if you're active, engaged, interested, committed, people will love that, and they'll actually come back to you again and again to serve on more and more boards and committees and things, and to volunteer. So there are benefits to that as well. A couple of years ago, I had the silly idea when an opportunity arose to run for Congress from this district as a Democrat in a district that hadn't elected a Democrat since Watergate, and that was the only time in 100 years. And I also had the timing to run in the Republican wave of 2010, which was the worst year for Democrats in 60 years. But it was a phenomenal experience. But one thing you do when you're a congressional candidate is you spend most of your time, it's sad but true, fundraising. And that fundraising is not just going to fundraisers. It's actually you're sitting in a desk calling people. Sometimes you're calling strangers. Sometimes you're calling friends. And sometimes you're calling old classmates. So I went through all my classmate lists from law school and some in college and was calling them, asking them for money. I mean, you talk about humiliating and humbling, and that was hard. Some people I hadn't talked to in almost 20 years, and I'm calling and asking them, you know, they might live in New York City or Oklahoma or California, and I'm asking them, you know, for $500 or $1,000 or more dollars. What a tremendous experience, though, because the response that I got from people that, like I said, in some cases I hadn't talked to in 20 years, their first thing was, I mean, without hesitation, oh yeah, Pat, I remember you. You're a good guy, and I think you'd be a good congressman. I'm going to send you a check for $1,000. You know, just like that. Somebody who I didn't even know that well in law school. Or someone would say, you know, Pat, I'm a lifelong Republican. I've never voted for a Democrat, and I never will. But I'm going to send you $2,000 because I know you, and you've got good integrity, and you work hard, and you're thoughtful, and you belong in Congress. So I mean, gosh, you know, again, I didn't even know it back at the time, but I was establishing a reputation back in law school, and it really became positive. And our law school class was fantastic to me in my campaign. It was even better to Barack Obama's, but you know, because he raised probably $1 million for my class. But you know, it's just that will go to show you that people will step up for you that you know in your background. After that, 4A didn't work out. Then I went back to law firm practice. But I then I never ever dreamed of being a U.S. attorney. I never even thought of it. In fact, I was on the review committee for this position to interview people for it. And I just never saw myself in this job, never even conceived of it. But people in the office, after I ran for Congress, they really got to see me in action. They came to me and they said, you know, you should look at applying for this job. And I said, really? I said, it's not really what I do. I'm not a criminal lawyer. I've been working in private practice. And they said, no. It's managing. It's community relations. It's outreach. It's strategy. It's all these things, and that's in your skill set. And so I still said, no, I'm not sure. So I went and talked to a lot of people. I talked to friends and others that I had been assistant U.S. attorneys, and I said, what do you think? And they, to a person, said, yeah, no, you could do that. You could do that job. So I applied, got through the local review committee of attorneys, 22 attorneys who reviewed the applicants. I got all their votes except for 2, you know, and they recommended me to the senators. Senators Debbie Stabenow and Carl Levin, they knew me, they knew my reputation. They forwarded my name on then to the White House. And I knew I was going to be okay there. I kind of thought, you know, I kind of thought I might be all right once I got there. And so then, yeah, the White House said absolutely. And then they sent me over and I went through my interviews with the Department of Justice, and those went well. And you know, this is a very multi-step process. Any one of those steps could have been the end of this potential opportunity. But each one was thumbs up. And then even the United States Senate and the Senate Judiciary Committee in an election year, 2012, forwarded my name on, or after they got my name from the White House and others, they put to the full Senate floor, got the vote, and became U.S. Attorney last July. So, you know, I never would have, a year before that, I never would have seen it coming. But I had been prepared, I was prepared for it, and based on the work I had done and things I had done. And I didn't let fear get in my way because it was something different, completely different and way out of my comfort zone. But I've been in this position for almost 8 months. It's just been a fantastic job. I'll tell you a little bit now about what that entails. I'm the Chief Federal Law Enforcement Officer in the Western District of Michigan. The Western District is 49 counties. Michigan has 83 counties. Western District is 49. So we're in Kent County. That's one of the 49. It's geographically pretty much right up the middle of the state, right up the spine, including the capital, Lansing, and all of the Upper Peninsula. So that's about 3.5 million people that live in the district. It's a very diverse district. We've got, you know, a lot of universities. We've got Western Michigan, Michigan State, Ferris. We've got 3 nuclear power plants, 3 national forests, 11 federally recognized Native American tribes where we have some jurisdiction to help them with their criminal prosecutions. We have 38 attorneys in our office and over 40 staff people. Our main office is here in Grand Rapids. We have an office in Marquette in the UP with some attorneys there. We have an office in Lansing and an office in Kalamazoo. We prosecute every type of federal crime there is. So we prosecute crimes that are investigated by the FBI, by the Drug Enforcement Agency, by the ATF, the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, Explosives, by the Secret Service, by the IRS, by Homeland Security. So we see cases from multi-state, multi-jurisdictional drug trafficking, narcotics, gangs, healthcare fraud, prescription drug abuse, human trafficking, child pornography and distribution cases, anti-terrorism, immigration cases. And so we see all those. We also, most actually by volume, most of the cases are actually civil cases. We also handle, we sue and defend, we sue on behalf of the United States government and we defend the United States government. So we might be suing somebody for, like a physician or a healthcare provider, for violating some of their requirements under government programs. So we might be suing for damages or penalties. We might be suing for environmental compliance. We might be suing in bankruptcies when the U.S. government is a creditor with tax liens and so on. We defend the United States government. So when at a federal health clinic, for example, if there's alleged medical malpractice, we might be defending that case. So we see a wide variety of cases. But most of our lawyers are, and most of our resources go to the criminal side, the criminal type cases. We are really, the people who work in the office, our career, you know, the U.S. attorney, we come and go because we're presidentially appointed. So when an administration changes, typically most of the U.S. attorneys, there's 93 U.S. attorneys in the country, and that includes Guam and the Virgin Islands and Puerto Rico. U.S. attorneys will usually change over when the president changes. I'll talk a little bit about, as I said, federal careers and law enforcement later, but, you know, I wanted to touch on a topic, given that it is National Criminal Justice Month, and it's also, by the way, National Women's History Month. And so I wanted to touch on, you know, crimes and violence against women, because a lot of, in your age group, for you that are students, that are under the age of 24, a lot of these types of crimes will affect you. And the statistics are just staggering. The United States Department of Justice National Institute of Justice says that 1 of 6 U.S. women have been a victim of a completed or attempted rape. 1 of 6. almost 22% of rape victims are raped before the age of 12. And 46.7%, almost half of child rapes are committed by a person the person sees as an acquaintance. So that's someone that they know. And almost a third of women are raped for the first time between the ages of 12 and 17. So this is definitely a young woman focused area, but you know, it's interesting. It's not just urban. In fact, for women that are age 34 younger, who are in lower income households and live in rural areas, they're experiencing the highest rates of sexual violence. But a lot of these cases are somebody that people know, that they know. Almost 7.7 million women are raped by an intimate partner in their life. 7.7 million. In 8 out of 10 rape cases, the victim knows the perpetrator. Now that's in terms of sexual assaults. Now in terms of violence against women, domestic violence, which is again a real scourge, 1/4, 25% of women have experienced domestic violence in their lifetime, 1 out of 4. And women ages 20 to 24 are at the greatest risk of a non-fatal intimate partner violence. So having a boyfriend or a husband or somebody that'll hit you, or non-fatal violence. It's unbelievable. Of women that are killed with a firearm, almost 2/3 were killed by their intimate partner. 3/4 of Americans, 74%, personally know somebody who's been a victim of domestic violence. And on average, more than 3 women are murdered by their partner in the United States every day. So every day, 3 women wake up and then they don't survive that day because their boyfriend, their husband, murders them. And 1 in 5 female high school students have reported being physically or sexually abused by a dating partner. So that's 20%. So those are some of the really tragic things. There's also, as I said, we do human trafficking cases, which is kind of a silent epidemic. The U.S. State Department reports that 800,000 people are trafficked annually across international borders worldwide. This is forced slavery, folks. 80% of those were women. 70% are trafficked for sexual exploitation. And 100,000 to 300,000 children are prostituted in the United States. And so human trafficking is something that law enforcement is now really starting to focus on. I know Michigan's Attorney General, Bill Schuette, has announced some work on this, a commission. I know my counterpart in the Eastern District, Barb McQuaid, is too. Because wherever, the statistics will show, wherever there's an interstate highway, and there's an interstate highway pretty much everywhere, wherever there's a convention center or a resort, human trafficking is going on, whether it's runaways or undocumented immigrants. These cases, people are being taken advantage of either through forced coercion or physical threats. So it's something that we in the federal government are starting to take seriously. These are tough cases because oftentimes the victims, especially if they're undocumented aliens, they're afraid of coming forward, or they don't know, based on their country of origin, may not trust law enforcement. So we often can't get witnesses, even though we can do what's called a U visa to give someone status to help us prosecute a crime. The federal government has some tools. We have some statutory tools. We have the Federal Violence Against Women Act, and that holds rapists accountable for their crimes. It strengthens federal penalties for repeat sex offenders. It created the Federal Rape Shield Law, so it prevented offenders from using a victim's past sexual conduct against them during a rape trial. And so that was a very big step in terms of leveling the playing field. And it mandates that victims, no matter their income level, don't have to bear the cost of a rape exam or the service of a protection order. It also requires that a victim's protection order is recognized and enforced in all state, tribal, and territorial jurisdictions within the United States. So that's important. So if someone gets an order in Michigan, it's got to be recognized even if you're in Oregon, and vice versa. It increased the rates of prosecution, conviction, and sentencing because it helped communities develop dedicated law enforcement and prosecution units and domestic violence dockets in judicial courts. There was a big training component to this, and so it helped ensure that police respond to crisis calls and that judges actually understand the realities of domestic and sexual violence, because it helped train law enforcement officers, prosecutors, and victim advocates and judges in these cases and how to handle them. And it funds the Violence Against Women Act funds. It will train over 500,000 law enforcement officers, prosecutors, judges, and other personnel every year. It established the National Domestic Violence Hotline, which has answered over 3 million calls and receives over 22,000 calls a day, or excuse me, a month, 22,000 calls a month. And now all states, because of the Violence Against Women Act, all states have laws against stalking, and it makes stalking a crime. And all states also reformed their laws that previously treated date or spousal rape as a lesser crime than stranger rape. So this was really a good step forward. But we also need to continue to educate people, men and women, about the scourge of violence against women, and to be on the lookout for it and not to be afraid of coming forward and reporting it to law enforcement. In law enforcement, and specifically in a federal career, and whether it's law enforcement or not in a federal career, you're serving others, which I think is a form of selflessness and demonstrating actually a love of humanity. One thing service to others also does is it helps make a difference. It's one of the best ways to actually make a difference and to leave the world a better place than you found it when you entered it. And it's a great way to serve the public. It's a great way. You know, I've done service as a volunteer in charity. This is the first time it's been my career, my job, to be in it. But I really do feel every day, and it's an honor to serve the people of the United States, to represent the people of the United States in helping protect them and to preserve their rights and to further the cause of justice. Because I feel, and I think a lot of federal employees do, and anyone in public service does, that you're part of something bigger than yourself. You're serving, actually, as in the federal government, you're serving the causes of American principles, of justice, of liberty, of freedom, of equality. And you can do that whether you're in law enforcement, or you can do that you're working for the State Department, or whatever form of federal service, you're serving at least one of those principles. There's as many different careers in the federal government as there are careers, almost. I mean, there's such a wide variety of opportunities and challenges. You can work internationally in the Peace Corps, in the State Department, and in the Diplomatic Corps, in the military service. So there's just a tremendous amount of ways to serve. As I mentioned, there actually are paid internships through the federal government that you can look for. And having a paid internship is a great way to get a job, not just for that internship, but long term. Because apparently in 2012, 60% of college graduates who had a paid internship received at least one job offer. So they improved their odds of getting a job by having a paid internship. In the federal government, there's what's called the Pathways program, the Federal Pathways program. And that's available to students from high school through postgraduate school. So high school, college, graduate school. And it's available to currently enrolled students. So if you're enrolled in school, in our office, for example, we have the ability to hire up to 4 students in this program, but we usually will only do 2 based on our budget. The expectation is 20 hours a week of work. The pay is roughly $16,000 a year. So you're not going to get wealthy doing it, but at least you're getting paid. And it's great experience, and it's going to look good on your resume. We get a lot of resumes and applicants for our internships. We actually get a tremendous amount of unpaid, or a tremendous amount of applicants for our unpaid internships. Our law students, for example, this summer, we have these are unpaid internships. We have 3 students who have Michigan connections from Harvard Law School, and 1 from University of Michigan. And Michigan's a top 5-6 law school. So we are getting the creme de creme. And these are great students with great GPAs, great resumes. They're applying for unpaid internships to work in our office because it's great experience, and it's going to look great on their resumes that they worked for a U.S. Attorney's office. And these folks, frankly, could have worked in private law firms and made well over $1,000, well, probably nowadays, probably $1,500 or more a week. But they chose to get an unpaid internship with us because of that opportunity that we offer. We'll have them in the summer, they're working full-time, but for spring and fall semesters, we'll also have law students and sometimes undergrads working a minimum of 16 hours a week. in the fall and spring semester. And not only, they may be unpaid, but some schools will give you credit for the work in our office. We have, for example, we usually have 2 or 3 in the fall and spring semesters. They'll work in our civil division with our victim witness program or in our Marquette office. There's usually 1 or 2 of students in our Marquette office. There's also the Recent Graduates Program. This is something that our office doesn't do, but a lot of federal agencies do. And they will take graduates of qualifying education institutions or programs who apply within 2 years of receiving a degree or certificate of completion. So these are recent graduates. For veterans who couldn't apply within 2 years due to their military service, they've got up to 6 years to apply for that program to get their foot in the door. There's also something called the Presidential Management Fellows Program. And that is a program that is to people with a qualified advanced degree who apply within 2 years. They receive classroom training on leadership and management. They also get challenging work assignments. And it's paid, and they're looked at the end of their service in this program to being converted to a permanent or a term position. So it's a job pathway, just like some of these others are. That program, you can get more information about that program at www.pmf.gov. And you can get information of all of these internship programs at www.usajobs.com. www.usajobs.com. So, my final piece of advice for you in your education and career, in terms of what are some of the elements of success, it's really not a secret formula. It's really just work hard, learn as much as you can. Learn as much as you can, work hard, make good choices, have self-discipline, because you're going to have to sometimes sacrifice to do your best. You're going to have to sometimes sacrifice to study for that exam rather than going out to that party or getting that, to get that paper done. So you're going to have to have some self-discipline. Every day you're going to have to get up and work hard and study. Be motivated for excellence. Always be motivated to try and achieve excellence, to always do better. And I think this is very important. Maintain balance. Balance in your life. Work and play, family and work, community and job. Always try and stay balanced. Don't let the pendulum swing too far, too long in one direction. The more balance you keep in your life, I think the better off you'll be. So those are my thoughts. So thank you for your attention. And I said I would take some questions, so any questions? Anything about, yes? Wait for the microphone. Okay. She's smiling. She's there.
I'm Christine Houston. I'm graduating this year with my associates in juvenile services. I'm actually working at Pine Rest with traumatized adolescents, and I'm kind of teeter-tottering between psychology and law, but I know that law can be extremely expensive. It's around, I think, $200,000 just to go to Cooley. So
Wow.
Yeah, so I'm just wondering what kind of scholarships are out there for people who really want to get into these fields but don't have the means or the income to actually, go into them.
I don't know. Unfortunately, I don't really know about scholarship opportunities. I didn't have any when I was in law school, and so I don't know. I know the government. A lot of my classmates were getting government loans, student loans, the student loan program for law school. One thing I would say, investing in your education is always a good thing. I know it's tough, and I know there's sacrifices. Some people have to work and go to school at the same time, which is really hard. But if you look at the charts, the people who have more education, tend to earn more in their careers or have more control over your career and more options, job options. One thing I always recommend is getting a law degree. You'll hear a lot of lawyers say, no, don't get a law degree. Being a lawyer sucks. Why are you a lawyer then? If you don't like what do something else. I love being a lawyer. And one reason why I say get a law degree is because it pretty much qualifies you to do almost any job. Trains you for very little, to be honest, but it qualifies you for anything. I mean, you can be, you caught that, yeah? It's the truth, but it really, you can be, you can be a lawyer. So there's a lot of different types of law. You can be a lawyer on your own and your sole practice. You can be working in a big law firm. You can work in a company, in-house counsel. You can work criminal law. You can do criminal defense. You can do prosecution. You can do plaintiff's law. You can do plaintiffs, or you can do defense. You can do business law, transactional law, real estate, environmental, and that's just in the legal area. You can also do things that are, and I've got a lot of friends and classmates who have a law degree who don't practice law. They might be professors in college or university or in law school. They chose academia. They became authors. Some write books. Some chose to go into the State Department and go into the diplomatic corps. Some went into business and became business people or worked on Wall Street or what have you. So I even considered, when I was in law school, getting a joint MBA. And a guy said, no, it's an extra year of school. So instead of 3 years, it would have been 4. And he said, no, it's not worth it. Because really, you can get any job that you could get with that joint MBA, with an MBA, you can get with your law degree. And he was right. And so I think a law degree opens up a lot of doors. And now you do have to look at, and when I talked about like school, both geography, and the rankings are important. Life isn't fair. Remember I talked the story about how I couldn't get a white-collar job that summer? Well, I had a friend in law school who went to Yale undergrad, and he was philosophy major at Yale. I was a business major and economics major. He had his pick of jobs on Wall Street that summer to work in Wall Street investment banking firms. Why? He went to Yale. He knew nothing about finance, zero. He was a philosophy major. In fact, he hated capitalism, frankly. But he really, because of the alumni network and the reputation of that school, Yale, he could walk into any of the big investment banks and get a job for a summer. And I couldn't get a job at, Old Kent Bank in Grand Rapids. So where you go to school can really dictate what doors can open for you. So the advice I got when I was looking at law schools was go to the best law school you can get into. Not that you can afford, that you can get into. The finances and the money will take care of itself later on, particularly with options. So that would be, that's always my recommendation. Go to the best law school you can get into. Let the money handle itself. Because, for example, by going to a top law school, I did my 2 summers. So my first summer here working at Varnum Rittering downtown, and I was paid handsomely. And this was 20-some years ago, and I was making probably over $1,000 a week. My second summer, I worked for a big Chicago law firm and a big D.C. law firm. I mean, these are big law firms, international law firms. And I was making like $1,500 a week. I made more that summer than most people made in a year. And so that went a long way toward my tuition. But I would never even have gotten an interview at those firms if I wasn't at a top law school. So look at the opportunities that happened, and that would help. So, and even in law school, some of the top law schools will have low-income protection programs where if you go into public interest law, they'll help reduce your debt, your loans, because you've gone into a low-paying job to serve the public rather than choosing the big law firms that pay big money. So do well if you're looking at law school, do well in your LSAT. Another tip, take a law school admissions test prep course. It's not an SAT test, okay? This is another little secret. I thought it was. I thought, well, LSAT, SAT, ACT, I did well on those tests. Those are, well, that's not what type of test. It doesn't test what you know. It tests how well you take tests. It tests logic. It tests other types of skills. And it makes sense because it can't give an advantage to any particular discipline because it can't give a history exam because that would advantage history majors. It can't give an advantage to math because that would advantage math majors. The only people who really might have some advantage on the LSAT are engineering background because there's a logic to it, and maybe the logic and majors who go through the logic type thing. But you really have to learn how to take the test versus just, there were a lot of people who thought they were smart because they did well in their SAT in high school and figured they'd walk in unprepared and take the LSAT and do fine. And within 5 minutes, they were walking out because they were blown away. And they just screwed it up. So I was fortunate, so I took a prep course and was ready for that LSAT. So I hope that helps. You're welcome. Yes? Remember to smile. There it is. All right.
Hi, my name is Doris Dean, and I'm in the criminal justice program, getting my associates in juvenile services right now. My question is, besides your law degree, obviously, which one of your recognitions or awards are you most proud of, and maybe why? Because you have a long list.
Yeah, and none of the, and every time I received an award, I was always like, this is a byproduct. That was never my goal to get a lot of awards. I don't know which is the most. The Outstanding Young Lawyer Award was pretty cool, because there were thousands of young lawyers in Michigan, back then, and I wasn't even 30 yet. I was probably, I think, maybe 27, and so that was a cool. No, I was older than 96. Yeah, I was probably 28, 29. That was a cool award. But there's been some that have been very meaningful, like some from the NAACP and the Floyd Skinner Award, which actually was through community college, through the Giants Award, because that just is these were kind of a reflection of the work that had gone on before me and that made what I'm doing possible with the NAACP and Floyd Skinner, who was a great African-American attorney here in Grand Rapids. So those were very, very meaningful to me too, very much so. But yeah. Yes.
Hello, my name is Lamaro Stevens. I currently go to Ferris for a BA in criminal justice. Recently, Grand Rapids passed medical
marijuana. I can't even hear. I'm going to get the medical marijuana question. Okay, goodness gracious. All right.
It's not more so the marijuana. I want to know where do you stand as our local attorney wants to put his own 2 cents on it when it's already passed by the people. And he keeps on putting his 2 cents in it. Where do you stand on that?
All right. Well, I'll give the answer that federal, state. I mean, so people who are in criminal justice know that those are 2 different jurisdictions. And so I think you're talking about Grand Rapids that passed, the city voters passed a referendum so that people who have who are caught with a small amount of marijuana won't have a misdemeanor on their record. It'll be expunged. Okay, and then that may conflict with the state law in Michigan, which is very much misunderstood, because Michigan's medical marijuana law says, and it's much different than I think some people expected it to be, where you would, for people who were, had cancer or, other maladies, maybe go to a pharmacy and then get a prescription from a doctor, go to a pharmacy and get medical marijuana. What Michigan's medical marijuana law says is that a person can get who has a need, can go to a healthcare provider or a doctor and get a medical marijuana card, and they can get medical marijuana provided for them by a caregiver, a medical caregiver, and that person needs to be registered and licensed by the state of Michigan, and they can grow up to 5 plants they can grow 12 plants for 5 patients. They can have 5 patients, and they can also grow for themselves if they have a card. So they can grow 12 plants for 6 people. That's 72 plants. And so, but you're not allowed to have a dispensary where you can have just a ton of plants, and you're combining grow operations, and you're selling marijuana to whoever comes in. So it's a fairly limited law, the Michigan medical marijuana law. But here's the thing: under federal law, which supersedes state law, marijuana, medical or not, is still a controlled substance, and it's illegal. So whether it's 1 joint or 250 plants, it's illegal federally. The position of the Obama administration and my boss, Eric Holder, the Attorney General of the United States, is if you are in compliance with the state law, so if you are a caregiver who is growing who has 72 plants, they're under lock and key, and you don't have a firearm in the house, you're okay. And if you're a medical recipient with less than 2.5 ounces with a care card, you're okay. And we're not going and so, but what we do and will prosecute are people who are violating, oftentimes willfully, and they just don't even want to know. They're growing 150, 250 plants, and they're in business. And so we will prosecute those cases. So, in terms of the city, the interplay between the city law, which is, the city ordinance, which is the will of the voters, and the state law, I'll leave that for the courts. But really, what we have to do in law enforcement is we have to follow the law on the books that Congress has given us. And so, that's why, we are prosecuting cases which are worthy of federal prosecution. So that's, again, the big cases, the ones that have magnitude. And again, these are people that we're prosecuting that are way out of compliance with the state law. They're not even close. So that's where we are.
Good evening, sir.
Evening.
Ray Erickson, Police Academy recruit. I'd like to thank you for all of us for being here tonight and answering questions and having a talk. My question is to take you back to what you said about human trafficking. How prevalent is it in Michigan? And part 2, what areas have the highest prevalence of the problem?
Yeah, that's all I can say is it's very prevalent. I think the areas would be the areas where you have the concentrated convention areas, whether it's in the downtown Detroit area, which also is near the border of Canada, and has some major interstate highways coming up through it. I'm sure when we have conventions here in Grand Rapids, down at the DeVos Place and people staying in the hotels down there, I'm sure there's some going on there as well. We also are seeing cases, where there's restaurant workers people who are brought here often under false pretenses from other nations, not just Latin America, but also Southeast Asia or India. People are said, oh, you know, come here, we'll give you a job, and when you'll get your papers, and you'll get a visa, and you'll become an American citizen, and then these guys that are doing that, then they'll hold the person's visa and won't give it back to them unless they become basically their slave. So this is a real, you know, troubling area. You know, we've got Homeland Security and ICE, Immigration Customs Enforcement, working on it. We've got the FBI working on it, and so it's like I said, it's kind of a silent crime because it's hard to see, but oftentimes it'll come up when ICE is looking at somebody for doing things with illegal. You know, immigrants and undocumented aliens and others. So it's very prevalent, and it's getting more prevalent, sadly. Yes, sir.
Good evening. My name is Daryl Malone, and
Hey, Daryl.
this is my second semester in criminal justice. The thing that troubles me is and last semester in CJ 110, throughout that course, in every chapter, it mentioned the disparity of the justice system towards people of color. And in every you know how is disproportionate people of color in prisons and stuff?
Oh, yeah.
And my view is that district attorneys created this problem. And my question is, when will they be called to the carpet to answer for this, and what are they doing to correct the disparity?
To the first question, tonight, and to you calling to the carpet. But you know, I think, well, a couple things are going on there. One was, and the laws have changed now because it was, one thing that was causing a lot of the disparity was the difference in sentencings for crack cocaine versus powder cocaine. And so that, in recent cases and statutes, is being leveled out. So that's going to, where they're looking at, in fact, we've got a lot of prisoners who are appealing their convictions based on some of the changes that are being made now to those sentencing. There also are federal sentencing guidelines because what you were seeing were judges that were handing down sentences that were disparate. And so now there's a guideline system, which judges can ignore, but that kind of set the sentencing ranges, which prosecutors are bringing cases knowing the ranges for the sentences coming in. The other final thing is, at least at the federal level, is getting cases that belong at the federal level. In other words, because federal sentences tend to be much longer than state sentences. We carry hard, harsh sentences, and oftentimes mandatory minimums. And so one thing that I wanted to do as U.S. Attorney is get us out of the cases where the state really should be handling a case where you've got a single drug dealing defendant, okay, guy on the corner dealing drugs. That's a state case. That's not a federal case. You don't need to bring in the federal resources to do that case. Federal resources, when you've got a network, you've got an organized crime network, you've got a gang, and so we might go after the case if that guy's a little fish that will help us get up the ladder. But for the most part, if there's just a single defendant drug case, that's not where we belong. We belong just like we did last month with a 31 defendant RICO indictment of the Holland Latin Kings in Holland. That's a federal case. And so that's another way to try and address that disparity. It's obviously very troubling to me as an African American when I look at the numbers. I also look at the flip side of it. I look at it, the self-responsibility too, and the family structures, And I know there's lack of opportunity. I mean, we've got lack of economic opportunity, lack of educational opportunity. But we, as a people, we've got to make sure that we do what our parents, grandparents, and on did. I mean, they fought hard for the rights that we take for granted. The right to vote, the right to live where we want to live, and to work. And I just see too many people squandering that, by making really, really bad choices. So, working on it. Yes.
My name is Rayson Knight, and I just want to know what has been your biggest challenge since going into office?
That's a good question. I think the biggest challenge was probably getting acclimated to an area of the law that was really different than the one I'd been practicing for almost over 20 years. Getting my head around, being a prosecutor, looking at criminal activity. It was interesting because when I was talking to people before I took this job, one of the prosecutors I talked to, federal prosecutors, said, Pat, well, think about it. How many criminal law classes do you have in law school? And you really have two. You have criminal law and criminal procedure. And how many civil law classes? Well, everything else. So, civil law can be a lot more, in a lot of ways, more diverse, more complex. Criminal law is very straightforward. The statutes speak for themselves. There is case law, and then there's constitutional law as well. But it is very straightforward. But so an obstacle, I think, was not just for me to get my head around it, but also for the people around me that I'm working with, people in the office. On day one, I was their leader. And they've been doing, some of these guys, they've been prosecuting federal crimes for 30 years or more. And here I come, a neophyte. And so I've got to earn their respect because I'm now their boss. And same with the judges and with the law enforcement partners. So establishing that respect was an obstacle. But it was great because the people that I'm working with are fantastic. And I really one of the first things I did was listen. I spent a lot of time listening to people, hearing from their perspective on the office, what we were doing well, what we weren't doing well, what we could have done better, what we can do better, and I think that helped earn a lot of respect as well, just being a good listener and making good decisions that were thoughtful, not being kind of arbitrary or random, and but making thoughtful decisions that were logical and made a lot of sense. I think people respect that.
Any other questions? Okay. This looks like this will conclude the night. But as a token of appreciation for you taking time out of your busy schedule, we have some students that would like to present you with some little gifts from the Criminal Justice Department.
Oh, thank you. Let's see. Okay. All right. It's pretty nice. So, yeah, it is nice. It's a portfolio. Yeah. Leather. Grand Rapids Community College Criminal Justice Department. So that's great. Oh, and a pen, too. So, yeah. That's good. Oh, well, thank you very much. Appreciate it. Yeah, thank you. Coffee mug. So, it's good. Always can have a coffee mug. Always need one. So thank you so much for your attention. You're doing the right thing. You're getting your education. And you're improving yourselves through that, and you're going to make your lives better for it. So, I mean, education. It's very important. And it just opens so many doors and so many opportunities. And, you just never know the places that you'll go based on your education and the opportunities that'll come along in your life. So I just encourage you to keep up. Keep studying. Don't give up. Don't get disheartened. I had my times when it was, tough, but you just keep plugging away, and things will work out. So, thank you very much.
There are refreshments.